Hello, my history-loving friends. Welcome back. If you're new to my channel, welcome. I'm so glad you're here. This is a history channel. I do a little bit of everything. Mystery, crime, disaster. Kind of, if I find it interesting, I may do a story on it. And if you like history, you probably will find it interesting as well. Today we continue our journey with Bonnie and Clyde throughout the Southwest Missouri tri-state region. Today's event occurred in Oronogo, Missouri, which is a very small community in Southwest Missouri. This will be the first big bank robbery that Clyde tries, and it won't quite go as planned. I think the bank stood here. So Clyde and Bonnie, I believe this is the first time Bonnie actively took part in one of their robberies. Prior to the Oronogo robbery, the press was portraying Clyde like some sort of criminal genius. Clyde was being given credit for crimes he had nothing to do with, and instead of being upset by that, Clyde thought that was awesome. He loved the attention, he loved being in the papers. Because of this, he wanted to have a gang. All the best criminals in the world have a gang, right? The James gang, Dillinger had a gang, Capone had a gang. Clyde wanted to be the leader of a gang too. And so to pull this job in Oronogo, he had two guys who were going to do it with him, Frank Hardy and Hollis Hale. Now they expected to do huge jobs with Clyde, like a Dillinger, or the Ma Barker gang had recently had a $24,000 heist at a bank. And this is the kind of thing they were expecting. They were reading about Clyde in the same papers everybody else was, that he's this criminal genius. It isn't going to go quite like they expect. The first bank they try to rob, it is unknown what bank this was. They go in to rob it, and the teller says, "This bank just failed. I have no money to give you." So that's starting off great. The Farmers and Miners Bank in Oronogo is their second try. Bonnie was sent in first to case the joint. Bonnie and Clyde were both extremely poor growing up. Their families never had bank accounts. They didn't know etiquette. So though Bonnie probably dressed appropriately, she didn't know what to do when she got in there, and a woman by herself loitering around a bank lobby stands out. People probably were on the lookout for them. Frank Hardy is going to go inside with Clyde. Hollis Hale will be outside in the getaway car. Just a short distance outside of town, Bonnie is waiting with another car that they will pull up to, switch cars, and then leave town. On November 30th, 1932, Clyde and his two accomplices pulled up to the bank to try his first, what he hoped would be his first really big bank robbery. I think he had a lot of confidence. I think he was feeding off the things the papers were writing about him being a criminal genius, and maybe he thought he could will that to be true, but it didn't go as planned. There was one teller and one customer. The teller had a gun, and he started firing away. It was just a little handgun, and this guy was pretty gutsy because Clyde used a BAR to rob this place. The newspaper said that it was the first time that a machine gun had been used in a robbery. Since he had robbed an armory previously, historians think it was probably a BAR that he had. So the teller starts shooting. Clyde opens up with the BAR, shatters the glass. There's broken glass everywhere, but the teller is okay because they had a bulletproof desk that Bonnie would have had no way of knowing about when she was in there. And it had been installed specifically for something like this. The teller hid behind that. He was safe. No one got hurt, except when Frank went to grab there was a bag of money, and he went and he grabbed it and got cut on the broken glass. They ran, they got in the car. When they leave the bank, they are met by two men firing at them from a garage, and they fired at them all the way out of town. No one got hurt. The papers said that Clyde fired back. I don't know if that's true or not, because a lot of times Clyde was a runner, so if he could run away, he usually focused on that. The take for the heist was about $110, which is a pittance. Afterwards, as Hardy and Hale are regrouping, they're realizing who they are with. This is no criminal mastermind. These visions they had of these huge, massive takes are not happening. They lie to Clyde and say that the robbery only brought in $80, which they split 3 ways. They took the additional that they didn't let him know about, told him they were going into town to buy supplies, and never came back. Within a year, Hollis Hale will be taken into custody and he will admit to taking part in the robbery. This in turn gets Hardy arrested for the robbery, and they each go to jail for robbing the bank in Oronogo. There was a lot Clyde didn't know about crime. One of the things is a lot of these huge bank robberies that were going on in the 30s, they had people on the inside. These gangsters had people that worked in the bank who were working with them. They had crooked cops on the payroll. They weren't just pulling up to random banks and going inside. And that's kind of what we see in movies too. That's what Clyde thought it was like. I think that's what a lot of people thought it was like then and now. But it wasn't. I mean, there was a corruption from the top to the bottom that was involved in a lot of this. After this, Clyde very rarely went after banks. I think he realized they were beyond his scope and ability to handle. And so he focused on little mom and pop shops where he would get small amounts of cash, just enough to keep them moving, to keep them going. Not to live in luxury, not to be rich, just to have spending money to keep going on the road. After Hardy and Hale leave, Bonnie and Clyde were left with about $25. 5 months later, they would be back in the area at Joplin. Thank you so much for watching. Up next, the kidnapping of motorcycle cop Tom Purcell in Springfield, Missouri, 2 months after this robbery.